The ash wastes of Armageddon stretched endlessly under a blood-red sky, the perpetual storms painting the horizon in shades of violence that matched the carnage unfolding below. Across broken ground littered with the wreckage of war, a green tide surged forward with the inexorable force of a tsunami made flesh. Tens of thousands of orcs bellowed their war cries, their collective roar shaking the very air, a sound that had broken the resolve of countless armies across 1,000 worlds. These were creatures born for war, genetically engineered killing machines who knew no fear, who laughed at death, who charged into battle with the kind of reckless joy that only comes from absolute certainty in one's purpose. They had overwhelmed fortified positions that should have held for months. They had torn through tank battalions with their bare hands. They had fought for 57 years to claim this world, and nothing, absolutely nothing, had ever given them pause. Until today. Until Gate 9 at Gatana Bay. Until they saw what stood waiting for them in the choking smoke and fire of the water processing plant's breached defenses. 17 towering figures emerged from the haze, like iron-clad revenants summoned from humanity's darkest myths. Each stood taller than the largest orc, encased in adamantium and ceramite armor that had endured centuries of warfare. Steam vented from their hulls with rhythmic precision. Weapons arrays that could level buildings tracked the advancing horde with mechanical inevitability. And from within each armored shell, ancient warriors who had fought since before the orc race had claimed this sector of space, prepared to deliver a lesson in the one emotion orcs rarely experienced. Not caution, not wisdom, but something far more primal and far more damaging to creatures built for endless war. Fear. This is the story of why orcs, the galaxy's most numerous and warlike race, have learned to recognize a threat that cannot be broken, cannot be stopped, and cannot be reasoned with. This is the story of Space Marine dreadnoughts and the terror they inspire in hearts that know no other dread. In the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war, and in that endless conflict, few sights inspire more awe and terror than a dreadnought striding into battle. To understand why these walking tombs strike fear into even the most fearless of warriors, we must first understand what they are, what dwells within them, and why they represent something fundamentally different from every other weapon on the battlefield. A dreadnought is not simply a vehicle. It is not merely a weapons platform. It is a legend given form, a warrior who refused to die wrapped in metal and fury, a living link to battles fought before most civilizations in the galaxy even existed. The creation of a dreadnought begins with tragedy. When a space marine, one of humanity's genetically enhanced super soldiers, suffers wounds so catastrophic that even their enhanced physiology and advanced medical technology cannot fully restore them, their chapter faces a choice. Let a hero die with honor, his legacy preserved only in memory and the precious gene seed harvested from his body, or offer him a continuation of service so profound, so terrible, that it exists somewhere between blessing and curse. The process of entombment is as much surgery as it is sacred ritual. The apothecaries and tech marines work in concert, stripping away everything deemed non-essential to the warrior's survival. Arms, legs, much of the torso, all sacrificed to preserve the vital organs, the spine, and most critically, the brain and battle-hardened warrior spirit that resides within. What remains, a broken and twisted remnant of what was once a proud warrior, is encased in an armored sarcophagus filled with nutrient-rich amniotic fluid. Cables and neural interfaces snake through this shell, connecting the warrior's nervous system directly to the dreadnought's machine systems through a mind impulse unit. The result is a fusion of man and machine more complete than any other in the Imperium's arsenal. The dreadnought's optical sensors become the warrior's eyes. Its weapon arrays become extensions of his will. When it walks, he walks. When it fires, he pulls the trigger. The sensation, by all accounts from those few who have described it, is simultaneously liberating and horrifying. Imagine your body replaced entirely by metal and pistons, your sense of touch reduced to pressure sensors across an armored hull, your voice transformed into a synthesized approximation that crackles from external speakers. The physical construction of a dreadnought reflects its purpose as the ultimate combination of durability and firepower. The armor plating consists primarily of ceramite, a heat-resistant ceramic-metallic hybrid that can withstand temperatures that would vaporize standard steel. This outer shell is reinforced with adamantium, one of the strongest materials known to the Imperium, forming an internal skeleton that provides structural integrity even when the outer armor is compromised. Some dreadnought patterns feature additional layers of ablative plating designed to dissipate energy weapon strikes, while others incorporate shielding technology that generates protective force fields around critical components. Standing between 3 and 5 meters tall, depending on the pattern, with some specialized variants, like the Leviathan reaching over 6 meters, a dreadnought towers over standard infantry while remaining more maneuverable than the massive battle tanks of the Imperial Guard. This size gives them several tactical advantages. They can navigate urban environments and fortress corridors that larger vehicles cannot access. They can physically interact with the battlefield in ways a tank cannot, crushing enemies underfoot or tearing through fortifications with powered fists that generate devastating energy fields. Their height provides excellent firing positions and sightlines, while their bulk allows them to serve as mobile cover for advancing infantry. The weapons loadout of a dreadnought varies by pattern and mission requirements, but all share the capability to project overwhelming firepower. A standard Castroferrum pattern dreadnought, the most common variant, typically mounts an assault cannon capable of firing hundreds of mass-reactive shells per minute, each one a miniature rocket that explodes inside the target. The other arm usually bears a power fist equipped with storm bolters, allowing the dreadnought to engage enemies at close range with fists that can crush tank armor while simultaneously laying down suppressing fire. Some dreadnoughts carry twin-linked las cannons for anti-armor work, plasma cannons that superheat matter into devastating bolts of stellar fire, or missile launchers that can saturate entire grid squares with explosive ordnance. More specialized patterns take this firepower to extremes that border on the excessive. The Contemptor pattern, an ancient design dating back to the Great Crusade 10,000 years ago, features superior agility and adamantic shielding that makes it even more resilient than its younger cousins. The Leviathan Siege Dreadnought mounts weapons so powerful they would rip a normal dreadnought chassis apart from recoil, storm cannons, and grav flux bombards that can level fortifications. The Redemptor pattern introduced with the Primaris Space Marines pushes the boundaries of what a single platform can carry, mounting everything from macroplasma incinerators to onslaught Gatling cannons that turn entire infantry formations into red mist. But beyond the physical specifications, beyond the technical data, what truly makes a dreadnought terrifying is who resides within. These are not fresh recruits given powerful tools. These are heroes who have served for centuries, warriors who remember battles from ages past, tactical geniuses whose strategic acumen has been honed across lifetimes of warfare. Some dreadnoughts are so ancient their memories extend back to their chapter's founding. They have witnessed the rise and fall of empires, fought against enemies that no longer exist in the galaxy, and accumulated knowledge that younger generations can scarcely comprehend. The oldest known dreadnought is Bjorn the Fell-Handed of the Space Wolves, who fought alongside the Primarch Leman Russ during the Great Crusade and the Horus Heresy over 10,000 years ago. Bjorn has been awakened for every major threat to his chapter, his wisdom sought by wolf lords when they face decisions that will shape the course of their brotherhood. He has personally slain thousands of enemies, his kill count exceeding that of some entire Space Marine chapters. His lightning claw, True Claw, has torn apart everything from orc war bosses to chaos dreadnoughts, and his presence on the battlefield carries a weight that transcends mere firepower. But this eternal service comes at a terrible cost. The neural interface required to control a dreadnought causes immense mental strain. Extended periods of consciousness lead to confusion, dyschronometria, where the pilot loses all sense of time passing, and eventually a form of senility as the organic brain struggles to reconcile its existence with its metal prison. To preserve what sanity remains, chapters keep their dreadnoughts in stasis between battles, allowing them to sleep away the centuries in dreamless cold. Yet even this mercy brings its own horror. Each awakening is disorienting, each battle potentially the last before being returned to the darkness. Many dreadnoughts develop bitter dispositions, their personalities eroding under the weight of endless war and lonely vigil. The process transforms more than just the body. Over time, the human memories fade. The faces of fallen battle brothers blur and vanish. The emotions that once drove them to heroism become distant echoes. What remains is the warrior's essence, the tactical brilliance, the stubborn refusal to yield, the burning need to serve even as humanity itself slowly leaches away. This creates warriors of terrible purity of purpose, beings who exist solely to prosecute war with a single-minded determination that can seem almost inhuman in its relentlessness. Now, to understand why these ironclad warriors inspire fear in Orks specifically, we must first comprehend the Orkoid psychology, a mindset so alien to human thought that it has confounded Imperial scholars and Xenos specialists for millennia. Orks are not simply aggressive. They are not merely violent. They are a race for whom warfare is as natural and necessary as breathing, genetically hardwired to seek conflict with the same instinct that drives humans to seek food and shelter. Orks were created during the War in Heaven millions of years ago by the Old Ones, ancient beings who shaped life across the galaxy for their own purposes. The Orks were designed as soldiers, expendable troops who could fight the Necrons and their reality-warping Satan masters. To make them the perfect weapons, the Old Ones built certain characteristics into their very DNA. Orks reproduce through spores they shed constantly throughout their lives and especially upon death, allowing a single ork to seed entire populations across a conquered world. They grow larger and stronger the more they fight, with the biggest orks naturally assuming leadership through a combination of physical dominance and an instinctive understanding that larger equals better in ork society. And perhaps most importantly, they possess a psychic field that makes their collective belief literally reshape reality in subtle but significant ways. This war energy, named after the Orks' infamous war cry, manifests in several important ways. When enough Orks gather in one place, their collective psychic presence creates a feedback loop that makes each individual Ork more confident, more aggressive, and essentially immune to morale effects that would break other armies. A mob of Orks fighting together literally becomes fearless through psychic reinforcement, each greenskin drawing strength from the presence of their fellows. This field also allows ramshackle Ork technology to function when by all rights it should fall apart. Red vehicles go faster because Orks believe red is the fastest color. Massive guns cobbled together from scrap fire reliably because the Ork pulling the trigger expects it to work. This doesn't mean physics stops applying, but it means the margin of error becomes much, much larger when Ork belief is backing up the engineering. The Orkish concept of warfare bears no resemblance to human military doctrine. Orks don't fight to achieve strategic objectives, at least not primarily. They don't wage war to acquire resources or territory, though these are pleasant side benefits. They fight because fighting is the purpose of their existence, the most joyful activity they can conceive, the fundamental expression of what it means to be an Ork. A good fight is its own reward. The bigger and more violent the battle, the better. Death in combat is glorious because it means you were in the thick of the action. Victory is wonderful because it means you get to fight again tomorrow. Even defeat doesn't truly register as failure in the Ork mindset because, as they often say, if we win, we win. If we die fighting so it don't count. If we run away, we don't lose neither, because we can come back for another go, see? This psychological framework makes Orks extremely difficult enemies to demoralize. Imperial Guard commanders have reported emptying entire magazines into Ork hordes only to watch the greenskins laugh as their comrades fell around them, finding the violence entertaining rather than frightening. Orks have been observed continuing to fight even after suffering wounds that would kill most species several times over. Their robust physiology and inability to process pain in normal ways, keeping them active long past the point where they should have collapsed. Some Orks have been decapitated, only to have their heads sewn onto different bodies by pain boys, the Ork medici specialists, and return to fighting strength with minimal concern about the experience. Yet for all their fearlessness, for all their psychotic joy in violence, Orks are not completely without the capacity for fear. Historical records document several instances where Orks have broken and run, though these cases are rare enough to be noteworthy when they occur. The World Eater's Chaos Space Marines, particularly when led by their demon Primarch Angron, have inspired such terror in Ork warbands that the greenskins have stampeded over each other in their haste to escape. Commissar Sebastian Yarrick, the legendary hero of Armageddon, earned such a fearsome reputation that Orks whisper his name with something approaching dread, believing he can kill with a look from his bionic eye, and that he is unkillable because he has survived so many battles. The key element in these cases of Ork fear is not the immediate threat of death. Orks embrace death in combat as part of the natural order. What breaks their confidence is the perception of futility, the recognition that continuing to fight will not achieve anything except meaningless death without glory. Orks will charge into the teeth of overwhelming firepower if they believe there's a chance to reach the enemy and get stuck in. They'll fight to the last if the battle itself is entertaining enough. But if they come to believe that victory is impossible and the fight has stopped being fun, their natural survival instinct overcomes the cultural programming. They'll retreat to come back for another go when the circumstances are more favorable. This brings us to a critical understanding. Orks fear specific things, not because those things can kill them, but because those things represent opposition that transforms war from entertainment into tedious, unavoidable annihilation. The difference between a challenge and a threat, between a good scrap and a waste of perfectly good boys. And few things embody this principle more completely than Space Marine dreadnoughts, walking symbols of everything that makes humanity dangerous, despite their relative weakness as a species. The Third War for Armageddon provides perhaps the most dramatic and well-documented example of Orks encountering dreadnoughts and learning why these ancient warriors deserve respect that borders on fear. The war began in 998, M41, exactly 57 years to the day after the Second War for Armageddon had ended. The Ork war boss, Gazgkul Mag Uruk Thraka, perhaps the most dangerous Ork leader in the modern era, had spent those decades preparing for his return. He had tested Imperial responses, refined his tactics, gathered allies from across the galaxy, and assembled the largest Warhammer the Imperium had faced in living memory. When Gazkul's fleets arrived in the Armageddon system, they outnumbered the Imperial Navy 6-1. Ork rocks, massive asteroids converted into assault ships, rained down on Armageddon's surface like apocalyptic meteors, each one disgorging thousands of greenskins into the hives and ash wastes. The Imperium scrambled to respond, calling in over 20 Space Marine chapters, dozens of Imperial Guard regiments, Titan legions, and the full might of Battle Fleet Armageddon. The fighting was brutal and immediate, with neither side willing to give ground. Among the critical strategic locations was Gatana Bay, the site of a massive water processing plant that served multiple hives across the equatorial region. Water, always precious on Armageddon with its toxic atmosphere and endless industrial zones, became a key objective for both forces. Controlling Gatana meant controlling the lifeline of millions of Imperial citizens and industrial complexes. The Orks understood this and committed substantial forces to its capture. The assault was led by warboss Judrog Irentooth, a Goth warboss whose name suggested both his clan and his preferred method of making his points known in Orc society. Judrog had gathered every Def Dread and Killer Can in his considerable arsenal, the Orkoid equivalent of Dreadnoughts, for a single massive push against the Imperial lines. Def Dreads are terrifying in their own right. Orks, who volunteered to be permanently wired into large walker chassis in exchange for devastating firepower and the ability to wade through enemy formations, crushing everything in their path. The process is agonizing for the Orc pilot, requiring them to sacrifice much of what makes them Orky, trapped in a claustrophobic metal can for the rest of their lives. Most come to regret the decision, going slowly mad in what other Orcs call running in, though their fury finds perfect outlet when unleashed on the battlefield. The defensive lines around Gatana Bay had been weakened by a previous commando attack. Elite Orc infiltrators who had sabotaged key positions and sown chaos in the rear areas. When Judrog's mechanized assault crashed into these compromised positions, the defenders found themselves rapidly overwhelmed. Orc Def Dreads smashed through barricades, their big shooters and rockets reducing defensive positions to rubble, while their massive claws tore apart anything that got close. The Imperial Guard units holding the outer perimeter fought valiantly, but were simply outmatched by the concentrated armored assault. Slowly but inexorably, the Orcs pushed toward Gate 9, the main entrance to the water processing facility itself. This was the moment Brother Deimos of the Angel's Porphyr had been waiting for. The Angel's Porphyr, a successor chapter of the Blood Angels, had responded to the call for aid at Armageddon, knowing their experience would be needed. Brother Deimos was a venerable Dreadnought, a warrior whose service stretched back centuries, whose tactical acumen had been proven in countless battles. He had been placed in command of 17 venerable Dreadnoughts drawn from multiple chapters, each one a hero in their own right, each one piloted by a warrior whose skills and experience made them legends within their respective brotherhoods. The Dreadnoughts had positioned themselves in a defensive formation specifically designed to meet a mechanized assault. They stood in overlapping firing positions that would allow them to support each other, their heavy weapons trained on the approaches to Gate 9. The narrow confines created by the water processing plant's architecture meant the Orcs would be forced to advance through kill zones where concentrated fire could be brought to bear. It was a textbook defensive setup, the kind that appeared in tactical manuals dating back to the Great Crusade. When Judrog's Def Dreads charged into view, bellowing war cries that echoed from their external speakers, they found themselves facing something their pilots had perhaps never encountered in their violent careers. Ancient warriors who had fought Orcs like them 1,000 times before, who knew every weakness in their ramshackle armor, who had refined the art of Dreadnought combat across centuries of warfare. Brother Deimos gave the order, and the 17 Dreadnoughts opened fire in a carefully orchestrated volley that demonstrated exactly why experience matters in warfare. The first salvo was devastating. Assault cannons chewed through Orc armor with mass reactive shells that exploded inside the Def Dread's hulls. Lascannons carved through vital components with beams of coherent light hot enough to vaporize ceramite. Missile launchers sent crack missiles into the most vulnerable points, targeting joints and ammunition storage with precision that only centuries of practice could achieve. The lead elements of Judrog's assault simply disintegrated under the onslaught. 17 Def Dreads reduced to burning wrecks before they had closed half the distance to Gate 9. But Orcs are nothing if not determined, and the survivors pressed forward with the kind of stubborn courage that makes them such dangerous opponents. The remaining Def Dreads accelerated, their pilots understanding that their only chance of survival lay in closing the distance and engaging in the close-quarters melee where Orc fighting prowess typically dominated. They absorbed fire that would have stopped entire armored columns, their ramshackle construction and the Orkoid psychic field, keeping them functional through sheer, bloody-minded refusal to acknowledge defeat. They reached the Space Marine lines with perhaps half their number intact, crashing into the Dreadnought formation with all the grace of a meteor impact. This was the moment Judrog had bet everything on, the point where Ork power claws would tear into the enemy and decide the battle through raw violence. For a brief instant, it seemed like the gambit might succeed. Def Dreads grappled with venerable Dreadnoughts in struggles that shook the ground, power claws sparking against power fists, armor screeching as it was torn and crushed. But Brother Damos had not survived for centuries by being unprepared for close combat. At his signal, the Space Marine Dreadnoughts executed a countermaneuver that demonstrated the vast gulf in tactical sophistication between Imperial and Orkoid forces. Led by Brother Waylands, the Dreadnoughts didn't merely defend against the Ork assault. They counterattacked with coordinated precision, using the bottleneck created by the gateway to isolate and destroy the Ork walkers one by one. Where Ork Def Dreads fought as individuals, each pilot focused on the enemy directly in front of them. The venerable Dreadnoughts worked as a unit. They covered each other's flanks, provided supporting fire to brothers engaged in melee, and systematically eliminated threats in order of priority. The battle at Gate 9 lasted several hours, an eternity of grinding mechanical combat, where the screech of tearing metal and the thunder of heavy weapons merged into a symphony of destruction. The Orks fought with everything they had, the pilots of the Def Dreads, fully committed to the assault, knowing that retreat was impossible once they had engaged at close range. Not a single Ork walker attempted to flee, their pilots' pride and the cultural imperative to never back down, keeping them in the fight, even as their numbers dwindled. But pride and determination, while admirable qualities, cannot overcome the fundamental advantages that experience and superior engineering provide. One by one, the Ork Def Dreads fell. Some were torn apart by power fists that crushed their jury-rigged components. Others were immobilized by precise strikes to their locomotion systems before being finished off by sustained fire. A few were literally torn apart when Space Marine Dreadnoughts grabbed hold of vulnerable points and simply pulled, their superior strength and leverage turning Ork walkers into scrap metal. By the time the last Def Dread fell, its pilot's final curse dying on its external speakers, Judrog's bold gambit had failed completely. The tactical situation at Gatana Bay was secured, but the psychological impact of that battle rippled far beyond the immediate strategic value of holding a water processing plant. Ork survivors from supporting units, those who had witnessed the battle from observation positions or fought in the surrounding areas, carried back tales of what they had seen. Ancient Umia machines that could not be stopped, that absorbed damage that should have destroyed them, that fought with a cold precision that was fundamentally un-Orky in its calculated ruthlessness. The story spread through the Ork warband and beyond, becoming part of the oral tradition that Orks use to pass information between mobs and warbands. This was not an isolated incident. Throughout the Third War for Armageddon, Dreadnoughts proved themselves decisive in battles where the Orks' numerical superiority should have been overwhelming. The Blood Angels deployed 41 Dreadnoughts under the command of Venerable Astramael in defense of their homeworld of Baal against the Ork Wag of Big Scorcher. These ancient warriors, some dating back to the Great Crusade, formed the iron core around which the Blood Angels' defense was built. They held critical positions where retreat was impossible, where the weight of Ork numbers should have broken any defensive line, and they did not yield a single meter of ground. Brother Barkus of the Ultramarines made the ultimate sacrifice during the Ork invasion of Espandor in the late 41st millennium. When his chapter was forced to conduct a fighting withdrawal in the face of overwhelming numbers, Barkus volunteered to serve as the rear guard, his Dreadnought chassis allowing him to hold a vital choke point long enough for his brothers to reach safety. The Orks, who finally overwhelmed his position, did so only after exhausting all their ammunition against his armor and resorting to burying him under a literal mountain of their own dead. When the Ultramarines returned to recover his sarcophagus, weeks later, they found it surrounded by hundreds of Ork corpses, testament to the cost the Greenskins paid for each meter of ground they took. These stories, and dozens more like them, created a legend around dreadnoughts that transcended their actual tactical capabilities. Yes, they were powerful. Yes, they were difficult to destroy, but so were many other Imperial weapons systems. What made dreadnoughts special in the Orkish consciousness was the combination of seemingly impossible resilience and the certainty that an ancient warrior of terrible skill guided every action. Orks understand individual combat prowess. They respect fighters who have proven themselves through victory. A dreadnought represents that principle taken to its logical extreme, a warrior who has been fighting for so long that they have forgotten more battles than most orks will ever participate in. The fundamental difference between how orks and humans view warfare becomes critically important when understanding why dreadnoughts inspire such dread. Orks love a good fight, but for a fight to be good, it needs certain qualities. There must be a chance, however slim, of victory. The enemy must be engaging rather than simply annihilating. There should be glory to be won and respect to be earned. Dreadnoughts violate all these principles simultaneously. They offer no realistic chance of victory for most ork warriors. Fighting them is less engaging in a good scrap and more being systematically dismantled by something that treats you like an obstacle rather than an opponent. And there is no glory in being crushed by a power fist or obliterated by an assault cannon, just a messy death that doesn't even make for good storytelling afterward. Consider the experience from an orc's perspective. You're a boy in a mob that's been fighting across Armageddon for months. You've killed plenty of Yumis. They're regular soldiers going down easy when you get close enough for chopper work. You've even taken down some of their fancy beaky boys, the space marines who think they're so tough but bleed just like everything else when you hit them hard enough. You're feeling good, building up a proper reputation, maybe thinking you'll challenge the knob for leadership once you get a bit bigger. Then your mob gets the word to assault some Yumi position. Standard stuff. Charge across the broken ground while their guns chatter away, a few boys falling, but plenty more making it through. You're almost at their lines when the ground starts shaking with heavy footfalls. And then you see it. A machine 3 times your height, armored in metal that gleams dully in the ash-filled light. Its guns are bigger than you are. Its fists could crush a truck, and from external speakers comes a voice that sounds like it's speaking from the bottom of an ancient tomb, announcing in that clipped Yumi way that you and your entire mob are about to die. You do what any orc would do. You charge, bellowing your war cry, ready to show this metal git what a proper goth can do in a fight. Your choppers bounce off its armor without leaving more than scratches. Your slugger's bullets ricochet without effect. The thing doesn't even slow down, just keeps walking forward with the inevitability of a glacier, its weapons tracking and firing with mechanical precision. Your knob tries to get close, his power claw sparking with energy, but the Yumi machine backhands him casually, sending him flying 20 meters to land in a broken heap. Then it turns those gun barrels toward you. The psychological impact of this experience cannot be overstated. Orcs are used to fighting enemies who react to being hit, who show fear or pain, who can be intimidated or at least engaged in the kind of mutual violence that makes combat entertaining. A dreadnought does none of these things. It exists in a state of mechanical calm, processing targets and eliminating threats with the efficiency of a factory stamping out parts. The warrior inside might feel rage or satisfaction, but those emotions are filtered through centuries of discipline and the mechanical interface itself, resulting in actions that appear cold and remorseless to outside observers. This creates a form of existential horror for orcs that is distinct from simple fear of death. It's the horror of realizing you're not in a fight at all. You're being processed, eliminated, removed from the battlefield as efficiently as possible, so the dreadnought can move on to more important targets. You matter so little to this ancient warrior that he's not even going to remember killing you. You're just another orc among thousands he's destroyed over centuries of service. Your death is a statistic, a tally mark, less memorable than the breakfast he had 300 years ago. The comparison with orc deaf dreads makes this even more obvious. When 2 deaf dreads fight, it's spectacular. They crash together like titans, trading blows that would level buildings, shouting insults at each other through their speakers, making it personal even though both pilots are trapped in metal shells. There's passion, there's anger, there's the sense that these two are having the fight of their lives and loving every second of it. That's how Orks understand combat should work. When a Dreadnought fights a Death Dread, the contrast is stark. The Space Marine pilot approaches it as a tactical problem to be solved. What are the weak points in Ork Walker construction? How can I use superior positioning to gain advantage? Which weapon system will most efficiently disable this target? The fight, if you can even call it that, often ends quickly. The Dreadnought maneuvers to deny the Death Dread a favorable engagement angle, strikes at vulnerable points with precision that comes from experience, and moves on while the Ork Walker is still trying to figure out what went wrong. There's no joy, no passion, just professional execution of a military objective. This extends to the broader tactical role Dreadnoughts play in Imperial strategy. They're often deployed as anchor points in defensive positions, immovable objects that the enemy must somehow overcome to advance. The psychological effect on Ork mobs approaching such positions is measurable in their reduced effectiveness. Orks charging toward a Dreadnought-anchored line will start strong, their collective war energy keeping them motivated. But as casualties mount, and it becomes clear the beaky machine isn't slowing down no matter how many boys get stomped or shot, that confidence begins to waver. Individual Orks start thinking about survival rather than glory. The mob loses cohesion. And if enough Orks decide simultaneously that this particular fight isn't worth it, the entire assault can collapse in a way that wouldn't happen against human or even Space Marine defenders. The Imperial commanders who understand this have learned to exploit it ruthlessly. Place a single Dreadnought at a critical choke point, and it becomes worth 10 times its weight in conventional armor. Not just because of its firepower, though that certainly helps, but because Orks who see it will be less willing to commit fully to the assault. They'll hesitate. They'll look for alternative routes. They'll try to find some way to bypass the problem rather than tackling it head-on. And in warfare, hesitation is death. That moment of doubt allows Imperial forces to reinforce positions, call in artillery strikes, or execute flanking maneuvers that would be impossible if the Orks pressed forward with their usual reckless abandon. The legend of Dreadnoughts in Ork culture has grown to the point where it's become self-reinforcing. Young Orks hear stories about the ancient Yumi machines from older warriors who've actually faced them. These tales get embellished in the telling, as all stories do, until Dreadnoughts become almost mythological figures in the Orkish consciousness. The metal git that killed 3 whole mobs by itself. The ancient beaky that walked through our entire defensive line and we couldn't even slow it down. The machine that our war boss hit with everything and it just kept coming. Some Orks, particularly the more experienced ones, have developed a grudging respect for Dreadnoughts that borders on professional admiration. They recognize that the things are proper tough, that the warriors inside know what they're doing, and that facing one is a challenge that proves whether you're a real fighter or just another git. These Orks will specifically seek out Dreadnoughts in battle, viewing their destruction as the ultimate test of combat prowess. If you can take down an ancient beaky machine, your reputation is made. You'll have credentials that no other Ork can challenge. The problem, of course, is that very few Orks who attempt this actually succeed. The ones who do succeed become legends in their own right. Warboss Gazgkol Thraka himself is rumored to have destroyed multiple Dreadnoughts during his campaigns. His massive power claw and adamantium-reinforced skull giving him the tools necessary to engage these targets on something approaching equal footing. But even Gazgkol, the most successful Ork warboss in the modern era, treats Dreadnoughts with more caution than he shows most enemies. He'll target them with concentrated firepower, attempt to swamp them with numbers, or try to maneuver around them rather than engaging directly unless absolutely necessary. This pragmatism, unusual for an Ork, shows how even the greatest greenskin leaders have internalized the lesson that Dreadnoughts represent a qualitatively different threat than standard Imperial forces. The psychological warfare aspect extends beyond individual battles. The mere presence of dreadnoughts in an Imperial force can affect Orc strategic planning in subtle ways. War bosses conducting reconnaissance will note how many of the metal gits are deployed to a sector and adjust their plans accordingly. Areas heavily defended by dreadnoughts might be passed over in favor of softer targets, not because the Orcs are cowards, but because even they recognize when a fight isn't worth the casualties it would require. This creates defensive multipliers for the Imperium. A chapter that has a higher than average number of operational dreadnoughts can defend more territory with fewer overall forces, because Orcs will be less willing to probe their defenses aggressively. There's also a temporal aspect to dreadnought psychology that Orcs find deeply unsettling when they think about it, which admittedly isn't often. Orcs live in the moment. Their culture has minimal written history, and their oral traditions focus on immediate concerns, like who's the biggest, who had the best fight recently, and where the next good scrap can be found. The idea of a warrior who has been fighting for thousands of years, who remembers battles from before the current war, or the one before that, or even the dozen before that, is almost incomprehensible to the Orcish mind. It suggests a level of dedication and purpose that goes beyond anything in their cultural framework. When an Orc faces a dreadnought, they're not just fighting a powerful enemy in the present tense. They're fighting against history, against accumulated experience that spans eons, against a lineage of warfare that extends back to the founding of the Imperium itself. Every tactical decision that Dreadnought makes draws on knowledge earned through 10,000 years of conflict. Every shot placed with precision reflects battles against Orcs just like this mob, in circumstances just like this engagement, dozens or hundreds of times before. The Orc is fighting for the first time. The Dreadnought has fought this exact battle before and knows how it ends. This creates a paradox in Orcish behavior around Dreadnoughts. On one hand, they represent everything an Orc should want to fight. A tough opponent that will give them a proper challenge and make for great stories if they somehow win. On the other hand, they embody a type of warfare that is fundamentally antithetical to Orcish psychology: cold, calculated, efficient, and utterly devoid of the joy that makes combat meaningful to greenskins. The result is a kind of cognitive dissonance that manifests as a wariness that Orcs rarely display toward other enemies. The strategic implications of this psychological dynamic have influenced Imperial doctrine significantly. Chapters that maintain large numbers of functional dreadnoughts often request assignment to sectors with significant Orc presence, knowing their ancient warriors provide tactical advantages beyond simple firepower. The Salamanders, Blood Angels, and Space Wolves, chapters known for their reverence of their dreadnoughts and careful maintenance of these irreplaceable relics, have particularly strong records against Orc incursions. Their dreadnoughts aren't just weapons, they're force multipliers that shape the entire character of engagements. Recent developments in the 42nd Millennium have added new dimensions to this dynamic. The introduction of Primaris Space Marines brought new dreadnought patterns like the Redemptor, Brutalis, and Ballistus. These variants, built to house Primaris-sized warriors and equipped with weapons that push the boundaries of what a mobile platform can carry, have proven extremely effective against Orc forces. The Brutalis in particular, designed for close assault, with its twin Brutalis talons and multi-melters, has become a terror weapon in urban warfare against greenskins. Its ability to tear through Orc positions and literally shred deft dreads in close combat has added new chapters to the legend of dreadnoughts in Orcish consciousness. The Redemptor Dreadnought, the most common Primaris dreadnought pattern, represents a technological refinement that addresses many of the limitations of older designs while introducing its own complexities. Its enhanced armor, improved targeting systems, and devastating firepower make it arguably the most capable general-purpose dreadnought ever deployed. However, The neural load required to interface with its systems is so intense that pilots deteriorate faster than those in traditional patterns, burning out rather than fading slowly over millennia. This creates a situation where Primaris dreadnoughts are even more precious than their predecessors, each awakening potentially the last time the pilot can be safely roused from stasis. Looking at the broader context, dreadnoughts represent something unique in 40k's endless warfare. They are one of the few weapon systems that combine overwhelming material capability with profound psychological impact. A Lehman Russ battle tank might have similar firepower and durability, but it's piloted by baseline humans and can be understood in conventional military terms. A Titan is more powerful, but also so rare and massive that Orks rarely encounter them. Dreadnoughts occupy a sweet spot where they're common enough that most Ork mobs will face them at some point, powerful enough to be genuinely threatening, and unusual enough in their nature to create lasting impressions on Orkish psyche. The cultural transmission of dreadnought-related fear through Ork populations is also interesting from a xenobiological perspective. Orks don't have formal education systems. They don't write tactical manuals or conduct after-action reviews. Yet somehow, the knowledge that ancient beaky machines are proper dangerous and need to be approached carefully spreads throughout their society with remarkable efficiency. This likely occurs through a combination of oral storytelling, genetic memory encoded in the spores that all Orks shed, and the psychic gestalt that connects Orks at a subconscious level. When enough Orks have experienced dreadnoughts and come away impressed or intimidated, that information becomes part of the collective Orkish consciousness. This has led to some interesting tactical adaptations on the Ork side. Some war bosses have begun specifically training dedicated anti-dreadnought units, usually equipped with rockets, power claws, and other weapons capable of damaging heavily armored targets. These specialists, when they exist, are marked for higher status in the warband hierarchy and given priority access to the best equipment. The fact that Orks have felt the need to develop counter-tactics specifically for dreadnoughts, when they typically just throw more boys at any problem until it goes away, speaks volumes about how seriously they take the threat these ancient warriors represent. There's also evidence that some of the more technologically sophisticated Ork clans, particularly the Bad Moons and Death Skulls, have tried to reverse engineer captured dreadnought technology to improve their own Def Dreads. These attempts rarely succeed in any comprehensive way. The technical sophistication required to build a proper dreadnought is simply beyond even the best mech boys. But incremental improvements, like better armor placement, more efficient power systems, and improved neural interface designs, have filtered through Ork technology pools as a result of these efforts. The fact that Orks are willing to expend resources studying captured dreadnoughts, rather than just stripping them for scrap metal, shows a level of respect unusual in Orkish culture. The individual Space Marine chapters' approaches to deploying their dreadnoughts against Ork forces vary based on their tactical doctrine and cultural traditions. The Iron Hands, with their reverence for mechanical enhancement, deploy dreadnoughts in integrated battle groups where they work alongside Predator tanks and other armored assets. This creates layered defenses where Orks find themselves engaging multiple heavily armored targets simultaneously, preventing them from concentrating fire on any single platform. The confusion this generates in Orkish battle lines allows the Iron Hands to systematically dismantle enemy forces with minimal friendly casualties. The Blood Angels take a more aggressive approach, using their Furioso dreadnoughts as shock assault units that punch into enemy formations and disrupt Ork cohesion through sheer violence. Furioso dreadnoughts, specialized for close combat with blood talons and frag cannons, excel at creating chaos in packed Ork mobs. Their pilots channel the black rage that haunts all Blood Angels, transforming their dreadnought into an avatar of barely controlled fury that terrifies even Orks with its intensity. When a Furioso charges into an Ork line, the resulting carnage is spectacular and serves as an object lesson in why underestimating Blood Angels is fatal. The Space Wolves, with their emphasis on individual prowess and sagas, treat their dreadnoughts as honored elders, whose wisdom is as valuable as their combat capability. Bjorn the Fellhanded's participation in any campaign is treated as an event of enormous significance, his mere presence boosting morale among Imperial forces and spreading concern among Ork mobs who recognize his heraldry. The Wolves often use their dreadnoughts as command nodes around which entire battle strategies are built. The ancient warriors, coordinating younger space marines while personally engaging the most dangerous enemy elements. The broader strategic picture shows how dreadnoughts have influenced the eternal conflict between Imperium and Orks in ways that extend far beyond individual battles. Chapters that can deploy significant numbers of dreadnoughts find themselves naturally suited to defensive warfare in Ork-contested zones. The ancient warriors can hold key positions indefinitely, their resilience and firepower making them ideal anchors for defensive networks. This allows aggressive chapters to focus their mobile forces on offensive operations, knowing their dreadnoughts will keep critical installations secure. The recovery and maintenance of damaged dreadnoughts has also become a significant consideration in prolonged Ork campaigns. Tech Marines assigned to Ork war zones spend considerable time developing techniques to repair battle damage under field conditions, often working directly on the front lines to keep these precious assets operational. The loss of a dreadnought, either through its destruction or the inability to recover its sarcophagus from the battlefield, represents a catastrophic blow to a chapter that goes beyond the loss of any other asset. Orks have learned that targeting retrieval operations, attempting to deny Space Marines the ability to recover fallen dreadnoughts, can demoralize enemy forces in ways that simple military victories cannot. Some particularly cunning warbosses have even attempted to use captured or destroyed dreadnought chassis as trophies or intimidation devices, a deft dread sporting pieces of Space Marine dreadnought armor as additional plating, or a warboss's banner mounted with a dreadnought power fist sends powerful messages to both Orks and Imperials. To the Orks, it proves their boss is tough enough to take on the ancient beaky machines and win. To the Imperials, it represents desecration of honored dead and often provokes responses out of proportion to the tactical situation. This psychological warfare cuts both ways, with the mere suggestion that a dreadnought has been captured and defiled often being enough to spur entire companies to risky rescue operations. Looking toward the future, several factors suggest the role of dreadnoughts in anti-Ork warfare will only grow more important. The recent Ork technological renaissance, driven by warbosses like Gazkul, who have demonstrated strategic thinking unusual for greenskins, means Imperial forces face increasingly sophisticated threats. Orks are fielding better equipment, coordinating their assaults more effectively, and learning from past defeats in ways that suggest growing tactical acumen. In this environment, the experience and wisdom contained within dreadnought sarcophagi becomes even more valuable. An ancient warrior who remembers fighting Orks when they were less organized can identify patterns in enemy behavior that younger commanders might miss. The opening of the Great Rift and the beginning of the Indomitus Crusade has also changed strategic calculations. Many chapters found themselves cut off from their traditional homeworlds, forced to operate independently for extended periods. In these circumstances, dreadnoughts provide invaluable continuity and institutional memory. When all other records are lost and communications are impossible, the ancient warriors remember their chapter's customs, their tactical doctrines, and the lessons learned over centuries of warfare. They become living libraries of military knowledge that cannot be destroyed by any enemy action, short of completely annihilating the chapter itself. The psychological dimension of dreadnoughts' effectiveness against Orks also suggests potential applications beyond direct combat. Imperial commanders have begun experimenting with using dreadnought deployments as deterrents, positioning these ancient warriors in ways that influence Ork strategic decision-making without necessarily engaging in battle. The mere rumor that a particular sector is defended by significant dreadnought forces can shape where Orks choose to launch their attacks, allowing Imperial forces to dictate the terms of engagement to a degree unusual in warfare against such an unpredictable enemy. As we draw this examination to a close, it's worth reflecting on what the orc fear of dreadnoughts tells us about both species. For orcs, it reveals that beneath their culture of violence and apparent fearlessness lies a practical recognition of threats that fall outside their preferred combat paradigm. They're not suicidal, they're opportunistic. When faced with an enemy that negates their advantages and plays to their weaknesses, even orcs will reconsider their approach. This makes them more complex and interesting as antagonists than simple, mindless brutes. For humanity and the Space Marines, the psychological impact of dreadnoughts on orcs validates their decision to preserve their greatest warriors in these walking tombs, despite the terrible cost to the individuals involved. The Dreadnought program represents a bargain between the practical needs of warfare and the moral weight of condemning heroes to an existence that is simultaneously glorious and torturous. That these ancient warriors provide advantages beyond simple firepower, that they reshape the battlefield through their mere presence, helps justify the continuation of a practice that many find ethically questionable. The relationship between dreadnoughts and orcs also exemplifies one of Warhammer 40,000's central themes: the triumph of determination and expertise over raw power. Orcs have numbers, resilience, and enthusiasm in abundance. What they lack is the focused purpose and accumulated wisdom that human civilization, for all its myriad flaws and failures, can bring to bear. A dreadnought is the ultimate expression of that human capacity to remember, to learn, to improve through experience. That such a thing can stand against the green tide and not merely survive but prevail speaks to why humanity has endured in a galaxy that should have swept them away long ago. In the end, the terror that dreadnoughts inspire in orcs is not about the fear of death. Orcs embrace death as an inevitable and glorious part of existence. What they fear is irrelevance, the sense that their participation in the eternal war means nothing, that they are not warriors engaged in honorable combat, but merely obstacles to be cleared from the path of something far older and far more terrible than they can fully comprehend. When an orc faces a dreadnought and survives the experience, they carry with them the knowledge that somewhere in the galaxy are enemies who fight not for joy or glory, but because they have been fighting for so long that warfare has become their entire existence. They are walking memorials to fallen civilizations, monuments to battles forgotten by everyone except the warriors, entombed within their armored hulls. And that, perhaps more than any weapon or armor, is what makes Space Marine dreadnoughts the terror of the green-skin hordes. The ash wastes of Armageddon still burn with the afterglow of war, the same as they have for centuries, the same as they likely will for centuries to come. Somewhere in those smoking ruins, a mob of orcs prepares for another assault, another glorious scrap against the Yumis who defend this world with such stubborn determination. And somewhere else on that same battlefield, a dreadnought stands vigil, its optical sensors scanning the horizon, its weapon systems running through diagnostic checks. The ancient warrior within contemplating the next engagement with the same cold calculation that has defined his existence since he was interred within this metal tomb. When they meet, as they inevitably will in the endless wars of the 41st millennium, the outcome is as certain as the sunrise. The orcs will charge with their customary enthusiasm. The dreadnought will respond with practiced efficiency. And afterward, the surviving orcs will add another story to the growing legend of the ancient beaky machines that cannot be stopped, cannot be broken, and cannot be matched by anything in the greenskin arsenal. This is why orcs fear dreadnoughts, not because they represent death. Death is everywhere in their violent existence, but because they represent something far more disturbing to creatures built for war. The possibility that all your fury, all your strength, all your joy in combat might not be enough. That you might face an enemy who has forgotten more about warfare than you will ever learn, who views your entire existence as a tactical problem to be solved rather than a worthy opponent to be engaged. And in the grim darkness of the far future, where there is only war, that knowledge changes everything. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the legend of Dreadnoughts and their psychological impact on the Orc menace, please like and subscribe to the channel. We'll continue exploring the fascinating intersections of lore, psychology, and warfare in the Warhammer 40,000 universe. The next video will delve into another aspect of the eternal conflict that defines this dark future. So make sure you don't miss it. Until then, remember that in the grim darkness of the far future, some terrors are eternal, some warriors never die, and some legends only grow with time. For the Emperor, for the chapter, forever war.